It is Wednesday, January the 26th. I'm Pearson Bowen. This is the CBC Morning Report. Barbados diplomat Dr. Jean Holder is dead. Dr. Holder, who was passing the age of 85, was founded and spent 24 years at the helm of the Caribbean Tourism and Development Center, which later became the Caribbean Tourism Organization. He was also chairman of Regional Air Carrier Ict for 16 years before retiring. Dr. Holder served on the West Indies Federation in the 60s and in 1973. He was also a founding member of the National Independence Festival of Creative Arts Committee, of which he was chairman. Among his honors, Dr. Holder received the Barbados government's Lifetime Achievement Tourism Award and the Barbados Companion of Honor. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley says she's truly saddened at the passing of her dear friend and guide, Dr. Jean Holder. She notes that his death is a loss to Barbados and the entire Caribbean. Prime Minister Motley says Dr. Holder will continue to be praised as a genuine Caribbean Renaissance man, a patron of the arts, a Barbados scholar, public servant, and consummate defender of regional culture. The Prime Minister said on behalf of the government, the people of Barbados and her own family, deepest sympathy to the Holder family, in particular Dr. Holder's daughters, Janet and Caroline. Barbados is now in prime position to attract new international business and big investment to these shores. The assessment and assertion from the president of the Barbados International Business Association, Derek Cummins. It comes on the heels of Barbados being announced as the least corrupt country in the Caribbean, according to Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index 2021. The island is ranked 29th out of 180 countries after securing a score of 65 out of 100. Mr. Cummins reacted to the report on Newsnight.
Barbados continues to hit the right notes on a number of parameters that make Barbados a value jurisdiction for international business, for domiciling your business, for settling your business, for doing branches, headquarters, etc. The reality is corruption impacts the process. We always talk about certainty of process. Corruption tends to add time to the process. It adds uncertainty and increase to the cost up front and potentially even higher costs on the back end. So where investors are placing their money, and they can look to Barbados and see that we are 29th in the list, and we are right behind the United States of America, and we are number 1 in the Caribbean. It's worth to note that, when they come to Barbados, they're trying not to be a permission state, so you can come here and there's certainty in how you ought to establish here, is certainty in how you ought to acquire licenses and permits, all that you require to do business. So definitely it's another parameter that international companies will put in their risk matrix when deciding where to do business, how to structure deals and finance.
Mr. Cummins also responded to calls from the recent election campaign about the need to clean up corruption in Barbados.
The previous administration had the 30 seats, and there was a lot of talk about what that would mean. But yet still in that, Barbados continues to climb this perception of corruption ladder and do better. The reality is we look at the fact that we missed on getting the integrity in public life legislation passed last round. We would expect we see that this time around. Again, it's perception, and perception matters. In reality, we are unable to quantify and even properly identify and deal with any corruption that is happening in Barbados. It's nuanced. No one talks about it openly, but perception alone really matters. And my expectation is that this new administration will go all the way this time in doing what it would have promised as it relates to integrity and public life.
This is the CBC Morning Report. We'll take a break here. When we come back, updates on the COVID-19 pandemic. Barbados has recorded a new high of COVID-19 cases. The dashboard for Monday, January the 24th has registered 923 new cases. That includes 420 males and 503 females. As far as isolation is concerned, 124 people are in health facilities, while 7,696 are in home isolation. Meanwhile, a man aged 68 succumbed to the COVID-19 yesterday. Health officials say he passed away at the Harrison Point Isolation Facility and was fully vaccinated. The number of deaths from the virus now stands at 277. There's been a renewed call for Barbadians to get vaccinated. This time it comes from the Director of Medical Services at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Dr. Clyde Cave, speaking to CBC on the heels of the recent fatalities of minors from the deadly COVID-19 virus. Dr. Cave said while it's well known that most children who contract COVID-19 will have minor symptoms, the current Omicron wave has created a situation that is more likely to see extreme cases.
Our recent cases have had some severe illness or pre-existing condition which has made their clinical course more serious and in fact has led to the demise of a few children. The underlying conditions of particular concern would be children who have lung disease like severe asthma, children with heart problems like congenital heart disease, obesity, which compromises the ability to breathe, childhood diabetes, Down syndrome, seizure disorders. In short, any chronic illness in children will make them more susceptible to severe disease if they do become infected with COVID-19.
Dr. Cave urged Barbadians to protect children who are vulnerable by vaccinating them wherever possible and also by vaccinating those around them.
Vaccinated people are less likely to contract a COVID infection, but even if they do, they are less likely to spread it and they are contagious for a shorter period of time. In addition to vaccinating all people around susceptible children, we should also pay attention to the wearing of masks, even by family members indoors, to good ventilation, sanitizing of surfaces, and of course, social distancing as much as possible.
Reports of troubling and, in some cases, disturbing experiences faced by children in lockdown and isolation during the COVID-19 pandemic has prompted the launch of a new study. The research document is to be done by the Substance Abuse Foundation and will look into the impact of adverse childhood experiences over the last 2 years. Some of the details were shared during the fourth and final webinar for the month, hosted by the National Council on Substance Abuse, to wrap up activities for Drug Awareness Month. Clinical Director of the Foundation, Alison Gotip, explains the objective.
What we're doing is a 5-year research document to look at the impact that COVID-19 has had on persons as a whole and also children. Because we've decided, because sometimes the impact can sometimes not be seen until way down the line, and it's still very new, even though it's been 2 years, it's still very new, and we're still doing that research. But we do have a research team, and that's our next project that we're actually doing, looking at how COVID-19 is impacting young persons. Because when you look at the ACEs, you can see things like isolation, parent isolation, maybe some emotional neglect, sometimes some financial issues, etc., can have a negative, is given a negative experience and exposure to young person. What is it doing to the person's psyche? How are they coping with that isolation, using online schooling, etc.? So that's key. So we are doing that research.
The police in London have opened an investigation into government events held during the country's coronavirus lockdown. The Prime Minister is under pressure after a series of revelations about rule-breaking gatherings. He was most recently accused of attending a birthday party organized by his wife during the first lockdown in June 2020. However, the criminal investigation may hand Boris Johnson more time to handle the political fallout, as it will delay an internal government inquiry.
Happy birthday to you.
June 2020, and school pupils wish the visiting Prime Minister a happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
The same day, his wife Carrie, dozens of his colleagues and even their interior designer attended a birthday celebration with cake inside 10 Downing Street. Now, finally, Boris Johnson's the subject of a police investigation, weeks after reports emerged of parties in or near Downing Street during lockdown.
I can confirm that the Met is now investigating a number of events that took place at Downing Street and Whitehall in the last 2 years in relation to potential breaches of COVID-19 regulations.
The move comes after officers working in Downing Street gave evidence to an existing internal government inquiry headed by civil servant Sue Gray.
That process has quite properly involved sharing information continuously with the Metropolitan Police, so I welcome the Met's decision to conduct its own investigation, because I believe this will help to give the public the clarity it needs and help to draw a line under matters.
The opposition Labour Party's repeated calls for Boris Johnson to resign, suggesting he'd lied to Parliament.
Just weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister told this House there was no party. How does the Paymaster General explain that? I know across the country people know enough. They have made up their minds about the Prime Minister, so when will his party catch up?
The Prime Minister's popularity and credibility ratings have tanked with every new report of alleged rule-breaking. One new survey suggests 62% of the population think he should step down.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was voted for Boris, but he's got to go, isn't he? He broke the rules, he's got to go.
It's taken so long, there's been so many controversies so far, and hasn't kicked him out of office, so it's a bit of a Teflon PM at the moment.
But many Conservative MPs have insisted they'll wait until Sue Gray's report is finished before deciding whether to trigger a leadership contest. So the latest twist could be a lifeline for the Prime Minister.
The 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games are 10 days away, and officials in China are making a full effort to ensure the 24th Olympiad isn't interrupted by COVID.
Wuhan's sports center has reopened for winter activities. But 2 years ago, the city's stadium was used for a very different purpose. It became a makeshift hospital for thousands who had fallen ill with the coronavirus.
The sports center set up 1,100 beds in 72 hours and admitted 1,056 mild COVID-19 cases in total. We managed to achieve 0 staff infections, 0 secondary infections, and 0 deaths.
On January 23, 2020, city authorities took the then unprecedented step of locking down its 11 million residents. Human-to-human transmission of the virus had just been confirmed, and more than a dozen people had died. From here, the virus would go on to infect hundreds of millions around the world. Today, Wuhan has resumed normal life, and officials say coronavirus infections in the city have been eliminated. The seafood and animal market where the outbreak was first identified is closed, though the pandemic's origin remains a mystery. An inquiry by the World Health Organization concluded that the possible leaking of the virus from a Wuhan lab was extremely unlikely, though many scientists are calling for further investigation.
The starting point of an international process can't be compromising with the Chinese government or appeasing its sensitivities. It has to be establishing a gold standard for what a full and unrestricted international investigation would entail.
The Chinese government has dismissed the theory and turned its attention to keeping coronavirus case numbers to 0. But this has been a struggle. The provinces of Henan, Shanxi, Guangdong and Tianjin City are battling outbreaks of both the Omicron and Delta variants. Millions of people have for weeks been confined to their homes.
Beijing has reported more than 10 COVID-19 cases this past week. Authorities have again pointed to imported goods, international deliveries and frozen food as a likely source of infection. Those living in the capital have been warned to limit deliveries from overseas, though many experts are skeptical that packages can transmit the virus.
People have also been warned against travelling during the upcoming Lunar New Year festival, the most important public holiday of the year. Officials here are under intense pressure to control the outbreak before the Winter Olympics opens on February the 4th. Those taking part in the Games will be confined to a strict venue bubble, designed to be sealed off to protect the rest of China's population.
We'll take a break here and have more of the CBC Morning Report after the break. Barbadians have been reacting to the announcement by Prime Minister Mia Motley about the composition of her cabinet, which will be sworn in this morning. Crystal Hoyt was in the city last evening. She filed this report.
Prime Minister Mia Motley has announced her cabinet, one notably smaller than her previous administration. However, she says no less transformational. Having heard the Prime Minister, Barbadians have their say on her selections.
Well, in terms of the size of the cabinet, I believe in terms of saving money with the economy at this present moment, you need a small cabinet. You don't need such a big and large cabinet where you're going to waste money, right? Where we could put this money back into doing good things for the country and hope that this cabinet could bring the best to the country.
I have no problem with the cabinet. I think she will do a good job.
Cabinet is all right. She have downsized the cabinet. My only problem is that Marshall Kettle, who I know have worked very hard, and when I heard that she was not in the ministry, I have to let them know that I am surprised.
The ministers that she picked, you realize that it's a smaller cabinet now than before. But remember she said that she still got something installed to deal with, so you don't know what else she coming with. But yeah, it's smaller.
Well, anybody should be happy that it reduced in size. I mean, taxpayers' money, anybody should be happy.
Yes.
What do you hope that this cabinet will be able to achieve for Barbados?
I'm hoping that they will do the job and do what is right and what is pleasing to Barbados and what is pleasing to the people of Barbados.
Are you happy with the size?
Of course. Everything that May do is well done.
But personally, I ain't got no problem. Whatever Auntie May do, it's all well and good with dunks, man. I ain't got no problem. I love Auntie May, so I ain't got no problem. I believe that what she's doing with Barbados, Barbados interests at her, and she's got the best of Barbados.
Crystal Hoyt, CBC News.
We will be live from State House for the swearing in this morning from 10. You can watch it here on CBC TV8 or on our social media platforms, and you can also listen to the swearing in on Q100.7 FM. Don't forget, it starts around 10 this morning. The insurance industry paid out tens of millions of dollars in claims last year. President of the Insurance Association of Barbados and Managing Director of Massey Insurance, Randy Graham, says the industry had to contend with a volcano eruption, a hurricane and a pandemic, but helping clients to get back on their feet was of greatest importance to them.
The hurricane was not one that we are accustomed seeing in Barbados, but I think what the hurricane taught us in the sector is that we do have to look at our building structures in Barbados to see where we can improve them, but also we as a sector need to find more creative ways to make sure that insurance is more accessible to the wider population. We know insurance is a cost, and we have to find ways to make sure that more people can access the product, because it's not reasonable to keep asking government to step in to be able to finance the losses, and so we have to look again in 2022 to find ways that we could make cover more affordable, make the cover more available to all persons in the population, so we can get ourselves as a country ready for the 2022 hurricane season.
The insurance official says the pandemic is still with us and plans are in place to make their presence felt when called upon to do so.
Generally, I think we are very happy, as I said, as a sector to have been able to help the population during 2021 recover from damage. And what we really want to do in 2022 is make sure that we get the insurance cover more accessible to more people in the country, so that when we get to the hurricane season, that more people have access to protect their homes and their assets.
The former Pope Benedict XV has admitted providing false information to a German inquiry into clerical sex abuse. He has blamed what he called editorial oversight for a previous statement that was absent from a 1980 meeting over a suspected pedophile priest.
He says he mistakenly told investigators in Germany that he wasn't at a meeting in 1980 held to discuss a priest who had sexually abused children. It was held while Benedict XVI was Archbishop of Munich. An inquiry by German lawyers concluded that Benedict knew about pedophile priests in 4 cases but failed to act. He's accused of allowing priests to continue carrying out pastoral duties despite allegations of abuse. Dominic Kane has more from Berlin.
The central fact that emerges from pages and pages and pages of evidence given by the former Pope just less than 6 weeks ago to this inquiry is he says repeatedly that if he can't remember a meeting taking place, then it didn't take place. Well, today, through a spokesman, he has said actually what he did was mislead the inquiry, not through bad faith, but by bad editing of this particular document. And he has now admitted that on one particular occasion he was present when the case of a specific priest who would go on to be convicted of child sex abuse. He was present at the time, and the allegation is that he did not do enough to act against this specific priest. Now, the former Pope has said in the original evidence, he said, well, if I didn't remember it, I wasn't there, and because I wasn't there, I couldn't have known what happened. Well, now these specific investigators have said, you were there. It follows, therefore, that it is likely that you knew what happened.
In other news, truckers in Canada are protesting the COVID protocol, where they have to be fully vaccinated to drive their vehicles over the border with the United States.
basically the rules that are in place on both sides of the Canada-US border. To be honest with you, both sides require full vaccination, 2 doses of an approved vaccine for truckers to move across the border freely. At issue here is that back in November, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that there would be a mandate for truckers returning to Canada or crossing into Canada must be fully vaccinated or have a 14-day quarantine. Most truckers in Canada are fully vaccinated, but some are opposed to being vaccinated. Others are opposed to simply having a mandate associated with their job. There was a time where truckers were exempt from these mandates, from the quarantine, the 14-day quarantine. That has now been lifted. The warning came in November. The mandate and the rule came into play just days ago. So now, thousands of truckers from across Canada are joining this convoy on the major highway, Highway 1, the Trans-Canada Highway, to go eastward toward the nation's capital, where they plan to stage, quote, a rally decrying policies that require drivers to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 in order to cross the Canada-US border. Now, the Canadian Trucking Alliance has spoken out saying that this mandate will not change. It is in place and it is for the greater good of the country. We will now await to see if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has a meeting about this prior to the rally that will be literally on his doorstep at Parliament this weekend.
Sports now. The new-look West Indies T20 squad has shown England they are more than capable to defend on home turf. The narrow 1-run defeat in the second game on Sunday and the opening victory on Saturday at Kensington Oval have proven that the series will not be a one-sided affair. Damien Best reports.
One legal ball left.
At the moment, 24.7 degrees Celsius under cloudy conditions, with the winds just falling off coming from the east at 17 kilometers an hour. We expect today a low tide at 8 minutes to 5 this afternoon and a high tide at 22 minutes after 11 tonight. At the beach today, we look for smooth to moderate swells in open water ranging up to 2 meters but remaining steady. In the forecast for Barbados today, cloudy with sunny periods with the occasional brief scattered light to moderate showers. That's for today. For tonight, cloudy with clear periods with the occasional brief scattered light to moderate shower. A look at some international cities now. Before we go, to remind you, there will not be any news day today at 12 noon on TV owing to our coverage of the swearing-in ceremony here on CBC TV8. That's it for today's edition of the Morning Report. I'm Pearson Bowen. Morning Barbados starts now.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Barbados, get up. Good morning. Good morning, Barbados. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning. Morning, morning, morning.
Good morning to you indeed. Good morning, good morning, good morning everyone. Welcome to today. Today is Wednesday, January the 26th, 2022. That's my name right there. I'm Pearson Bowen. Welcoming all of you here in Barbados, and for those of you across the world as well, thank you so much every morning for waking up to join with us on Morning Barbados. Thankful for your company indeed. You can watch us on our YouTube channel, Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, or on our Facebook streams on Morning Barbados and CBC Barbados. Thank you too. Now, don't forget you can interact with us on our Facebook stream. We're always welcoming your comments. Your engagement is important to us, so feel free to comment on what we do, but also feel free to always go back later and see the show again and gather the information that you may have missed because you didn't have enough time to write it down. So that's where it is, on our Facebook page, Morning Barbados on Facebook. Now this morning, Joan Underwood will be joining us as we continue to look through our manager's first aid kit. We're looking today at building a high performance team. It's a very engaged subject to look at, indeed, a chapter in the book. It'll take some time, so I hope you have your book and your copy ready as we get ready to engage with that. But are you as a consumer happy with the level of consumerism in Barbados? Well, there's a team of people who are students of the University of the West Indies who have developed what they're considered as the Consumer Shield Project. And so they'll join us this morning to share a little bit about what they are gleaning in their research and how they want to help agitate on behalf of the consumer in Barbados. So we'll be happy to hear from them. Also, our urologist will be joining us as, again, we'll continue our look into the surgery and different means and modalities of delivering health care to Barbados and how affordable and easy and quick and in some cases painless they can all possibly be. So stay with us for those opportunities. Plus, of course, we'll give you our good decision of the day. And of course, we'll ask you to guess the location. We'll have some fun this morning. It is indeed Wednesday, the middle of the week. Let's get started. Oh, by the way, before we go, let's remind you that today and tomorrow, the Ict Seminar will be on. There it is on your screen, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, in partnership with the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, and the International Telecommunications Union are presenting ICT in Education. It's a Caribbean forum. It's today and tomorrow, 9 o'clock in the morning each day. It's very engaged, but you need to register by going to the website that's CTU.int. CTU.int. A whole slate of speakers will be addressing on the subject. And so it's good for teachers and people in education to be a part of it. This starting today, continuing tomorrow, 9 o'clock each day. CTU.int is the website to go and register to be a part of that forum. So let's get started by delving first into our manager's first aid kit and looking at this big subject of building a high-performance team. And of course, one person who knows about building a high-performance team has written the book. And so because she's written the book, she's the best person to guide us through. Our good friend, our Wednesday morning woman, Joan Underwood. Joan, good morning to you.
Good morning to you as well, Pearson, and to our listeners and viewers.
You know, they say Wednesday babies are filled with woe. Kidding me. I'm a Wednesday baby. You're a Wednesday woman. I know you're not full of woe. You are full of promise and possibilities and exception. And that is why we're happy always to spend some time with you on a Wednesday morning. This subject, Miss Joan, is a big one, girl. It's a big one. And it's come right through now to the point where we're looking at managing people and processes. We've looked at managing ourselves, we've looked at managing people, now we're looking at those processes. Joan, how do we begin to unravel this chapter? And Joan has her perpetual smile coming right back at me. And you know, it's like, why isn't Joan blinking at me? But anyway, we'll try to resolve Joan's connection issues in just a little while. It's a very involved subject. I hope you have your book. I hope you've taken time to read ahead and you have prepared for this morning indeed, Manager's First Aid Kit. And we look at that. It is really quite a subject area. It's many pages to it because it's such a critical aspect of what we do as leaders and managers. Remember, the book is divided into 3 sections. We first looked at managing self, we looked at managing others, and now we're starting the managing of processes and systems. I believe she's back. Joan, you there with me?
Yes, Murphy is not going to stop us this morning.
Not at all. I don't care if he's male, female, what it is. Murphy is not working with us this morning. So Joan, it's a big subject area. You know, it is critical to move forward and we have a team, but that team must also be impactful and high performing. And it's often very difficult to put together. So how can you help us with this?
Well, let me start first of all by saying that many times when we assume that we have a team, we don't actually have a team. Why is that? Because there's certain features or characteristics that need to be in place for it to constitute a team. If you don't have those features and characteristics, what you have is a work group as opposed to a team. So unity of purpose is one of those things that we need to have if we are truly to constitute a team. We have to have complementary skills which come together in service of that single purpose. And sometimes we have people in a work group who appear to be working at cross purposes as opposed to contributing to the team. We have people who have different agendas, who, you know, prefer to work in silos, in isolation of each other. So the very first thing we need to do, if a team is in fact what we want to be high performing, is to have that common understanding of what the purpose is, followed by a commitment to contribute to the realization of that purpose. We also need to agree on the how of it. What's the strategy that we're going to use in order to fulfill that purpose? So those are, and communication. You can never say it too often. And, you know, whatever organization you go into, the chances are, if you ask persons about it, they'll tell you, we don't have good communication, we don't have enough communication. So that's something that we have to be extremely intentional about and are on the side of over communicating, because very few people will tell you, oh, they over communicate. They may say you talk too much, but talking and communication are not necessarily the same thing.
So to get there though, you know, there are so many, and you're right, a collection of people is not necessarily a team, but there, and this is not by accident how we've approached the book right the way through. We talked about managing self, and along the way we've been building relationships, we're building trust, we're building in communications, and now if we've done all of those things in readying ourselves for the role, then it might naturally flow that to get that team together would be easy. But there's some checklists that you've given to us. I know it's not that easy at all. It's not. We should never assume. We should always acknowledge that each person is the individual they are. And as a consequence, we have to be sensitive and mindful of what the value they bring and their own experiences and shared values.
Indeed. There's a saying, you know, wherever you go, there you are.
Yes.
We bring our entire selves wherever we go. And we're all from different backgrounds, different lived experiences, even with your siblings. You grew up in the same household, but I will guarantee that you're quite different. And so when we end up in the workplace with people that we may not have known previously, why do we expect them to think like we do, feel like we do, act like we do? We're going to have differences. And so that's why we did our building blocks before, and we spoke about empathy and everything we need to build relationships. No, let's assume, as you said, that we have that foundation. We're managing ourselves well. We know how to manage others. Now the task is to structure that team correctly and to build it out correctly. And one of the things that I advocate for doing that is to actually put in the time to create a team charter. And we can go through the elements that you would include in such a charter.
Because in that charter, you've listed 5 questions you said for us to answer. 1, to whom are we accountable? What are we expected to accomplish? Why does the team exist? What kind of team do you want to be? And how will you work together? Now, those are 5 very critical points. And it's so ironic that as I was reading, I was actually applying it to scenarios, my own real life scenarios. And by the way, thank you for those little emails that come to me daily as gentle reminders. They are very, very useful. But using my own reality, because I'm responsible for 3 different units in one department. 3 different radio stations, each of them with their own format, and each of them expected to deliver in different ways, but with one particular goal. And so, how are you able to pull each team together so they recognize what it is that they're supposed to achieve? And I started to apply myself to all of this and recognize I too have some work to do in developing the charter. Why is it important to have that charter?
Again, we have to have that unity of purpose, that shared understanding. So that beautiful example you gave in terms of the 3 different teams. Now, it's important because there are nuances. Each station might have a different area of focus. The people certainly are different. And so it's important for you as the leader to engage them, because this is not something you do at your desk and then post it somewhere and say, okay, guys, this is it. It's important to involve them in the process so that they have a shared sense of ownership. Because once they can see their fingerprints in it, they're more inclined to be on board. Yes? So as challenges come up, invariably they will, because, I mean, we have conflict and challenges within ourselves, never mind when we involve other people. So getting them involved in the process, having that shared understanding, having that commitment, and negotiating how are we going to work together.
Yes.
So you don't wait until things start to go sideways to then start negotiating how are we going to deal with this. But rather, when all temperatures are calm and everybody is going to go, you sit down and work it out. Because if you're going to wait until somebody's bent out of shape to negotiate how we deal with disagreements and conflicts, not going to make for the best conversation in the world.
That's not the time to do so. But having agreed that we'll develop a charter, and a lot of times people think that's just one meeting. That's not just one meeting. It can take time. And we've always, in the book as well, talked about the value of time and how on that timeline, the different waves that people go through, different waves that we all go through to reach the success that we wanted to achieve. So how do we re-engage our minds that we understand that time is a critical factor to this, especially when we have deadlines to meet?
Yeah, and one of my coaching clients put it so beautifully in a recent conversation, because this individual was a highly proficient technical person. and had been tagged for promotion to managerial ranks. And so I was brought on board to help to coach him through the transition. And he started out, if there's a problem in technician mode, if there's a problem, I'm going to fix it. I'm probably the best person to fix it, and I can fix it quicker than anyone else because I know more than they do. And so I had to work with him to realize that you cannot hold on to the technical work as you move up in the organization, because you're going to kill yourself. You can't do everything.
Yes.
So you need to get comfortable with delegating. You need to get comfortable in developing your people. And he said to me, you know, as we were winding up our relationship, I was, you know, in the exit process, I was asking, what are the things that you've learned that you will take away? And he said, sometimes you have to stop doing the work so that you can build the workshop. And I thought that was so beautiful.
Wow.
Right? So he realizes you can't always be focused on the task. And this is what this section of the book is all about. It's building the processes and systems that will enable the organization to succeed, that will enable the teams to be high performing. So time invested in building that infrastructure will save you time in the long run.
Indeed.
If you don't put in that effort up front, it's an investment. If you don't put it in, don't expect to be getting dividends or interest because you didn't put anything anywhere that would earn you dividends or interest.
All right, Joan, we're going to take a break here because it's such an involved subject. I want to come back and look at how, having, in the process, again, of forming that charter and the storming before we get to the norming of that charter as well. So we'll take a break. We'll come right back to talk about that and a whole lot more straight ahead. Stay with us. Yep, that's where we are at the moment. We are in the manager's first aid kit with Joan Underwood. Joan, welcome back. You know, I want to look now, if you don't mind, at having decided we're going to set the time aside to have those team charter meetings. So we develop this charter, the agreement about the way forward. And because I know that we have people of varying skill sets, varying opinions, whether they're very energetic or not, you know, there's that point in time when it gets very stormy. You know, there are people who are strong-willed, who have a feeling and an opinion, but it's consultative. How do I, as a leader, take myself out of the emotion, out of that space, and allow that process to unfold to the benefit of all?
So here I would recommend that we start even before we get into the substantive work on formulating our charter by agreeing to some ground rules, some terms of engagement, right? So establishing that, you know, we're going to be respectful of each other's opinions. You can challenge ideas, you can challenge concepts, you can challenge suggestions, but you do so in a way that's respectful and you're not challenging the person.
Yes.
You're challenging the ideas so that we can come out with the best possible solutions. Because there's nothing inherently wrong with conflict. After all, conflict is simply a difference of opinion, different perspectives. What can go wrong is how we deal with the conflict, because if we start attacking them, as opposed to challenging ideas or suggestions or perspectives, then people can get all up in their feelings, can get defensive, can get offended. So establish that going into the conversation before you start dealing with the substantive task. Agree on how you're going to engage each other. Set the framework. You as the leader set the framework in terms of how decisions will be made. So you're soliciting the input of everyone. But how will the decision be made? Is it going to be a consensus decision? Or will there be instances where you as the leader will have to exercise your prerogative to have the final say? Or are you going to defer to those who may have subject matter expertise related to the matter being determined? So before you get into any specific issue, set the framework. Because then if you start applying the framework and people are not going along with it, you say, hold on a minute. Remember, before we started dealing with this, we agreed this is the way that we were going to move forward. Are you prepared to stand by that commitment that you made? Right? And I mean, it's not a lot of people who will then admit, okay, no, I am going to breach my word now that I've already given it to you. So having that done, but the thing is, you don't ask for the commitment when you're in the fray of the battle.
Yes.
You get it before.
You know, gosh, I absolutely hate putting myself in situations when I'm doing the show, but I'll use it nevertheless. You know, there's some of my team who will say, you knew what you wanted to achieve anyway, why did you just say it? And because I wanted the process to be one where we're all engaged, all ideas contend, even though I know that you will probably end up where I want you to end anyway, but I want you to feel involved. Yes. Is that such a bad thing? Because I'll give you an example. I had recently at one of my little team meetings, again, we're forming a charter, we were just developing a concept, some concepts and so forth. And even though I know exactly where I wanted it to be, you know, I allow them to talk, and somehow either by miracle or maybe by my urging, they ended exactly where I wanted them to land. And then they looked at me and said, "She's on, Pearson. Well, you could have just told us that from the beginning, we would have just got on with it." Was that fair? Was my process flawed? What happened?
Let me call you out publicly.
Tell me.
Because even how you just told the story, yes, Pearson, I suspect that you pushed the people in that direction. Okay? And the thing is, as a leader, you must have some foresight. You must have a vision of where you want to be, right? But if you are going to authentically engage your people in consultation, you have to be open, you have to be receptive to the possibility that they may bring something to the table that you have not considered.
Yes.
And that when they do so, you have to be willing to apply your mind to say, okay, how does this change what I may have had in mind prior to them sharing this? And the other thing, leaders need to eat last. What do I mean by that? If you want people to genuinely share their thoughts and their perspective, you have to withhold your own. And you may say, but I didn't tell them what, but the thing is, you may have insinuated it. You may have been sending off some signals, and you don't have to tell me and the world, but in your heart, you know, examine it and see, okay, was I already telecasting what it is that I wanted the final to be?
But that's very difficult not to do, because you know what's ahead of you, you know what you're hoping to achieve, and how do you not put yourself in it.
I'm not saying don't put yourself in it. What I'm saying is be open to hearing their perspectives as opposed to being already determined or resolute, this is the solution. Because if that's where you are, just tell them, I agree with them. If you've already made up your mind, don't puppy show the people and them. Tell them what it is. All right? And there's some stances where it won't be amenable to consultation, because there's some situations where you have to be somewhat authoritarian, given I'm not saying all the time, but there are specific circumstances where you don't have the latitude to have a consensus decision, where you don't have the latitude. And I've used the example before. If you see this imminent danger, you deal with the imminent danger. You don't say, okay, let's discuss how we're going to stop this house from burning down. No, you do what you need to do, and you can debrief it afterwards. But a particular course of action is required. But not all decisions fall into that category.
Indeed.
So if there is an opportunity for you to genuinely consult, do so. And what you need to have in mind as a leader is, what is the desired outcome? What are our success criteria here? And you share that, and then you solicit input on the how of it. This is what I need to accomplish, folks, or what we need to accomplish. What are your thoughts, suggestions, ideas in terms of how we can go about accomplishing this? And then hush and let them share. Don't say, here's what I think, because once you put your thoughts out there with the distance, they're not likely to feel free to share their thoughts unless they're in alignment, in sync with what you've already said. So leaders eat last. You wait until you've heard from them. Acknowledge what you've heard from them. Comment, give genuine feedback, and we went through the feedback module already, chapter already, on what they have shared, so that they will see, okay, he really listened and heard, because he's given me specific feedback on what I shared.
And folks, this is all about building a high-performance team. There's going to be a lot of back and forthing in this situation as well as we develop this charter. And that's why the charter is also so important, so that we set the milestones, we set the benchmarks, we set the parameters in which we will operate as a team, and respectfully so. So it takes time. It really truly takes time, and sometimes those things need to be heard, because they will be said by your team to you as a leader, that I don't like how dictatorial you can possibly come across. And sometimes in your ignorance, you don't see it. You just don't see it. The mirror that you see says something completely different from the mirror that they see. And so it's vital in developing that charter that you do pay attention to those. To whom are you accountable? What are expected to be accomplished? Why does the team exist? What kind of team do you want to be? How will we work together? Shared values, shared commitments, shared goals, shared everything. And then, of course, there must be some reward. But charters are not etched in stone and then forevermore. Charters can also, I know you're smiling, look at you, look. Charters are also living, breathing documents that can be adjusted as situations occur, can't they?
Yes. And I tell a story in the chapter about the best team I've ever coached to this day, or managed. And we had our charter. Everybody had signed off on the charter, and we were functioning. I mean, we running on clean. And then I did something which a member of the team thought was not right, because I put something on her plate without consulting her. And it was it was a stretch assignment. And I just sat in my office and decided, oh yeah, I'll have Brenda Lee do this. And I communicated it to her as, done and dusted. It was a decision. It wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a consultation. And so because of the charter, and because we had agreed how we would interact with each other, she felt comfortable enough to challenge me. And of course, I quoted back the charter. I said, our charter says that we are all about learning and development, and we're going to lead by example as HR practitioners. Right? So it's my job to stretch you so that you can learn and develop. And she says, yes, but sometimes there's no more room to stretch. If you stretch a rubber band beyond its tolerance, it will break. And of course, there's no rebuttal for that. I had to acknowledge, yes. So we then went back to the charter and amended it so that persons would be comfortable indicating when they had been stretched to their capacity. Right? So you can't say, oh, we did a charter back in 2021. I mean, what's your issue? It's there into perpetuity. No. You need to have the flexibility to be able to revisit the charter as warranted.
As warranted, but you can't be constantly changing it either. So there are those scenarios you have to bear in mind. What's most important for the team. Joan, this is to be continued. This is to be. We haven't even finished it.
I'm glad you said that, because this chapter is so important. You know, you can't get things done outside of other people, right? So even though you may not meet the definition of a team right now, I'm putting it to you, everyone, not just you, Pearson, but wherever you are, once you sit in an organization, you should be aspiring to be a high-performing, value-added team.
Indeed. Well put. Joan Underwood, of course, with us. Remember, folks, you can get the book from Days Bookstore. You go to Days Bookstore today, tomorrow, soon, and get a copy of the book yourself, or online to utdsinc.com. Get a book there. And most of all, for you across the globe, you can go to Amazon and you can purchase it there as well. It's The Manager's First Aid Kit by Joan Underwood. It's a great book to have, as you can hear. And you can hear how much it means to me, and you can hear how much it can mean to you too. I encourage you to get it today. Joan, thank you so much again. Looking forward to seeing you again next week, if it be God's will. Thank you.
All right. Take care now.
It's my girl, Joan Underwood. Indeed, take care too. A break right here. When we come back, the news.
Wake up, wake up, wake up. Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
It's 4.5 minutes now after 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at the news. Barbadian diplomat Dr. Jean Holder is dead. Dr. Holder died at the age of 85 and founded and spent 24 years at the helm of the Caribbean Tourism and Development Center, which later became the Caribbean Tourism Organization. He was also chairman of the regional air carrier Ict for 16 years before retiring. Dr. Holder served on the West Indies Federation in the 60s, and in 1973 he was also a founding member of the NIFCA committee, of which he was chairman. Among his honors, Dr. Holder achieved the Barbados Government Lifetime Achievement Award, Tourism Award, and the Barbados Companion of Honor. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mia Motley says she's truly saddened at the passing of her dear friend and guide, Dr. Gene Holder. She notes that his death is a loss to Barbados and the entire Caribbean. The Prime Minister says Dr. Holder will continue to be praised as a genuine Caribbean Renaissance man, a patron of the arts, a Barbados scholar, a public servant, and consummate defender of regional culture. The Prime Minister, on behalf of the government and the people of Barbados and her own family, extended deepest sympathy to the Holder family, in particular his daughters Janet and Caroline. Barbados is now in prime position to attract new international business and big investment to these shores. That assessment from the president of the Barbados International Business Association, Derek Cummins. It comes on the heels of Barbados being announced as the least corrupt country in the Caribbean, according to Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index 2021. The island is ranked 29th out of 180 countries after securing a score of 65 out of 100. Mr. Cummins reacted to the report on CBC's Newsnight.
Barbados continues to hit the right notes on a number of parameters that make Barbados a value jurisdiction for international business, for domiciling your business, for settling your business, for doing branches, headquarters, etc. The reality is corruption impacts the process. We always talk about certainty of process. Corruption tends to add time to the process. It adds uncertainty and increase to the cost up front and potentially even higher costs on the back end. So where investors are placing their money, and they can look to Barbados and see that we are 29th in the list, and we are right behind the United States of America, and we are #1 in the Caribbean. It's worth to note that, when they come to Barbados, they're trying not to be a permission state, so you can come here and there's certainty in how you ought to establish here, is certainty in how you ought to acquire licenses and permits, all that you require to do business. So definitely it's another parameter that international companies will put in their risk matrix when deciding where to do business, how to structure deals and finance.
Mr. Cummins also responded to calls from the recent election campaign about the need to clean up corruption in Barbados.
The previous administration had the 30 seats, and there was a lot of talk about what that would mean. But yet still in that, Barbados continues to climb this perception of corruption ladder and do better. The reality is we look at the fact that we missed on getting the integrity and public life legislation passed last round. We would expect we see that this time around. Again, it's perception, and perception matters. In reality, we are unable to quantify and even properly identify and deal with any corruption that is happening in Barbados. It's nuanced. No one talks about it openly, but perception alone really matters. And my expectation is that this new administration will go all the way this time in doing what it would have promised as it relates to integrity and public life.
Barbados has recorded a new high for positive COVID-19 cases. The dashboard for Monday, January the 24th, has registered 923 new cases. That number includes 420 males and 503 females. As far as isolation is concerned, 124 people are in health facilities and 7,696 are in home isolation. Meanwhile, a man aged 68 succumbed to COVID-19 yesterday. Health officials say he passed away at the Harrison Point Isolation Facility and was fully vaccinated. The number of deaths from the virus now stands at 277. There's been a renewed call for Barbadians to get vaccinated. It's coming from the Director of Medical Services at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Dr. Clyde Cave. Speaking to CBC on the heels of the recent fatalities of minors from the deadly COVID-19 virus, Dr. Cave said while it's known that most children who contact COVID-19 will have minor symptoms, the current Omicron variant has created a situation that is more likely to see extreme cases.
Our recent cases have had some severe illness or pre-existing condition which has made their clinical course more serious and in fact has led to the demise of a few children. The underlying conditions of particular concern would be children who have lung disease like severe asthma, children with heart problems like congenital heart disease, obesity, which compromises the ability to breathe, childhood diabetes, Down syndrome, seizure disorders. In short, any chronic illness in children will make them more susceptible to severe disease if they do become infected with COVID-19.
Dr. Cave urged Barbadians to protect children who are vulnerable by vaccinating them wherever possible and also by vaccinating those around them.
Vaccinated people are less likely to contract a COVID infection, but even if they do, they are less likely to spread it, and they are contagious for a shorter period of time. In addition to vaccinating all people around susceptible children, we should also pay attention to the wearing of masks, even by family members indoors, to good ventilation, sanitizing of surfaces, and of course, social distancing as much as possible.
Well, that's our news until now. Just a reminder, there will not be any CBC News Day today owing to our coverage of the swearing in of the Cabinet from State House, which begins at 10 this morning, live here on TV8, on our social media platforms, and also heard on Q100.7 FM. So, our next big major newscast from the CBC will be at 1 in the CBC News World at 1 on radio. We're taking a break here. We're back with our good decision of the day after.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
So it's now 14 and a half minutes after 7 o'clock here on Morning Barbados. It's time for us to share with you what we hope for you will be, too, a good decision of the day. Take note of this, your daily health moment, the dinner rush. Use meal prep to get a leg up on ensuring you'll have healthy snacks for the rest of the week. For example, When you're already peeling and slicing vegetables, don't stop at just what you need for that night's dinner. Drop some carrot sticks and zucchini or pepper slices into containers you can use for dinner later in the week or to pack in lunch boxes. You'll also be more likely to reach for something healthy to snack on when it's already prepped. For example, dip sliced up veggies in hummus for afternoon or post-workout energy boost. So great advice. So while you're slicing and dicing your different vegetables, pack some away because they'll be easy to reach for when you need it and not to reach for those unhealthy snacks. So let's make that our good decision of the day to avoid the dinner rush by snacking nicely, one, but also using the dinner rush to prep in different positive ways for the next day. That's your good decision of the day, isn't it? Try it today. It'll work in your favor, we promise you. Now, time at 60 minutes after 7 for us to spot the location. Guess where it is. Now, it's also time for you to call me on 228-5562 or 228-5563. Easy, so look at this. Where is this bridge? Isn't it beautiful? This is absolutely a beautiful view of a part of Barbados. Thanks to my technical director, Roel Ford, who's taken the photograph today. Lovely perspective, Roel. Love it. Look at how the horizon, where the sea touches the sky, so to speak, where it's right in the center of the screen. Lovely perspective. But here we go. So, folks, where is this? Where is this bridge? 228-5562 or 228-5563. Let's see how good you are. Tell me, where is this bridge? Beautifully manicured lawns, lovely gardens, but look at the view, stunning. It is Barbados. So where is it? And for those of you who are watching from across the globe, eat your heart out. That's here. That's right here in Barbados. And perhaps when you do come visit real soon, you'll find it yourself. So tell me, where is this bridge? Tell me by calling me on 228-5562 or 228-5563. Let's see if this is really as simple as I think it actually is. Good morning. Hello.
Good morning, Pearson.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and yourself?
I'm well, thank you for asking. Where are you watching us from? What parish?
From Walker, St. Andrew, to be exact.
St. Andrew in the house. That's wonderful to hear. Now, you would not know where this is, I can tell you. You do not know. Where is this?
Pearson, it's down Sunny Golf Course.
You asking me questions, or are you telling me?
I'm telling you.
So tell me how you could tell me that for a fact.
Because
let me hear you.
I passed there more than one time.
You have passed there more than once?
Yeah.
And you're telling me this is where?
The golf course, Sally Lane.
Have you ever driven through Westmoreland?
Yeah.
Talk to me. And it doesn't look like this. Oops, I almost gave you the answer there. So tell me.
I know the Westmoreland is Sally Lane golf course.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I want you to know for sure that this is on the road to the Sandy Lane Golf Course or along that stretch. When last did you pass there?
Must be last year.
Last year? You said last year, right?
Yeah.
And you don't think it has changed?
I go on to about last year. I meant to least so.
I just give you trouble. Just give you real trouble. What part of St. Andrew are you?
Just a throw from the St. Andrews roundabout.
Oh, Boddens?
Walkers, St. Andrew.
Walkers, okay. Oh, so you're near to that. Okay, I got you then. So you're near to the quarry area?
Yeah.
So are you nearer to the Allen School?
No, Pearson.
Back the other side?
St. Andrew's Church roundabout.
I know below mean to you?
Below.
Oh, below to the western side?
Yeah.
All right. So when I come to the if I'm coming from Farley Hill and I come to the roundabout, I come off the roundabout on that right turn and go up that side. That's where you have to live up through there.
Yeah.
Oh. And that road takes you back to where?
Down Borden.
And through to where eventually? Does it take you back to town?
Right.
I mean, every road leads back to town practically anyway. Sister, you're right, man. Don't let me sweat you. What's your first?
Peter, you never told me. I said, to call you. I come with St. Andrew, but it's get all over Barbados.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Have you ever been up Sutherland Hill? Sutherland Hill in St. Lucie?
Check out Hall. All the places, Pearson.
So do you know Chance Hall?
Yeah, Chance Hall.
Tell me how to get to Chance Hall.
MPW.
Tell me how to get to Chance Hall. Tell me how to get a chance all. Miss Madam who's been all over Barbados. You don't have a clue, do you?
You know the MCW, therefore?
Yes, I do.
Corner.
I
Right.
understand. Listen, I'm from St. Lucie, you know? I'm from St. Lucie. So you can't trick me. Tell me how to get to chance all that day, Paul.
All roads need a chance all.
Good answer. Thank you so much for trying. Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. Okay, have a good day, okay?
Enjoy your day.
Thank you so much. She's absolutely right. Actually, the stretch of road is called Molyneux Road. So when you're traveling the highway, and you make that left turn off the highway if you're heading north at Molyneux Road, and you make your winding way down, you'll see that. You'll see that bridge. Thank you, Rural Ford. You traveled there recently. Thank you for the photograph indeed. It's great. It's a great view indeed. All right. Enough of that and enough of me. We'll take a break and we're coming right back with more on Morning Barbados.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
"22 minutes after 7 o'clock this Wednesday morning, we are about to learn a lot when we connect with Dr. Paul Rouse. As always, today we want to look at transrectal ultrasound guided biopsy of the prostate. Dr. Rouse, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Good morning, Barbados. Thanks for having me again.
As always, thank you so much for sharing of your knowledge and your experience. It is always good. I learn a lot when I sit and just listen and watch. I actually feel as if I'm in your lecture theatre, listening to you, taking notes as I go. But most of all, out of it, we can apply the information which you're sharing. So this process and procedure you're talking about now can be done in surgery by you?
In the office. In the office. The reason why I brought this topic, continuing the theme of prostate and prostate issues, which is a big part of my practice. And a lot of men get afraid when they have to undergo transrectal ultrasound guided biopsy of the prostate. And therefore, I thought this would be a good topic to discuss and hopefully get men more comfortable with this. Hopefully, once they've seen my slides and seen a little video clip there of how quick and hopefully not too painful the procedure is, then they'll get a lot more comfortable with it, so that when it unfortunately becomes their time to have this done, it won't be the first time they've been.
You make it sound as if it's inevitable when it becomes their time to have this done.
No, it's not inevitable, but unfortunately these things do come up in life that we need to deal with.
All right, so let's start. I'm ready with my pen, as you can see. I'm about to take some notes.
So if we go with the first slide, so what this is all about is, the real indications for why we would normally need to do a biopsy of the prostate is for men who present with a screen-detected elevated PSA, or if they've had lower urinary symptoms or other symptoms that we're concerned about any prostate disease. So again, we're talking about that gland all the time, the prostate gland. So you go to your GP. So I usually would suggest to patients that they have the usual routine and have the usually annual checks by their GP, which would include, from my end, the screen of the PSA as well as the digital rectal exam. So if your PSA is high, or if your digital rectal exam is abnormal by your GP, then they will send you over to myself or another urologist for further evaluation. So that patients don't get too afraid. It doesn't necessarily mean because you have a high PSA that you ultimately will need to have a biopsy. When you come to see the urologist, they will do further testing. They will look at certain parameters of your PSA. As I outlined there, your free PSA, free to total PSA. We look at your age-related PSA. And also we can look at other parameters like PSA density. I know some of my other colleagues use some other tests such as your P3 testing of the prostate as well to help screen men who would ultimately be concerned about prostate cancer and will need to go on to have a biopsy done of their prostate gland. So next slide, please. So not to be afraid of the digital rectal exam. It's fairly straightforward. It takes only a few seconds, and that could save your life. So a lot of men always worry about having a digital rectal exam. They always worry that it's going to cause them to potentially change their sexual orientation. No, it will not do that. It is not a painful test. Doctors know that if you're having any discomfort, it will suggest that maybe that you have some other issue like an anal fissure or tear that might cause it to be painful, and they will stop. It's not meant to be barbaric in any way. So don't be afraid of the digital rectal exam. Don't be afraid to have your PSA checked. This is slide was just to show what age-related PSA is all about. So therefore, if you get a patient, for example, in the 70s there with a PSA of 6, that would be quite normal for them. But you can see there, if a patient in their 40s present with a PSA of 6, now that is quite abnormal. So we know this as you get older, that your prostate will get larger. So we use an age-adjusted, at least I use an age-adjusted PSA. I think the American Urological Association as well as the European Association also recommend age-related PSAs. Here in Barbados, you tend to see them just reported as less than 4 as being normal. So therefore, that's why you need to sometimes have that consultation with your urologist so that it can explain things a little bit more detailed for you. And hopefully, in a lot of cases, sometimes you don't actually need to have a biopsy. I also in-house will, if you go to the next slide, please, would also do a rectal ultrasound as well to look at what we call your PSA density. Sorry, this slide here is about your Psa Velocity. There's another way to assess a man's risk of prostate cancer. So if your PSA is rising more, as you can see there, greater than 0.5 nanograms per mil per year in younger, that's a possible warning sign. Again, it does not mean you have prostate cancer. And similarly for older men above 60, if your PSA is rising more than 0.7 nanograms per mil per year, then that might be a sign that there might be something going on with the prostate gland. Next slide, please. And this is the PSA density I was talking about. In office, I would do an ultrasound of your prostate, get the size of your prostate, and then correlate that with your PSA. So if your PSA density is greater than or equals to 0.15, it just suggests that you're producing a lot more PSA than we would expect for that size prostate gland. So sometimes you can have a very small gland, or you can have quite a big gland, and that's where the PSA density can be helpful. And again, identifying those men that need to go on to have biopsy. Next slide, please. So when you've had that discussion about elevated PSA, and or if you have an abnormal feeling digital rectal exam, we might then need to go on to do biopsies. But we know that biopsies aren't benign. I'll go into the complications in a few minutes, and it brings a lot of anxiety. Nobody obviously wants to have to face prostate cancer. So there's other tools that are available. I'm happy to say in Barbados we do have both MRI centers do offer a multiparametric MRI, and this allows us to see if there's any abnormalities within the prostate. And for those men who are a little bit undecided, sometimes this can help us weigh whether or not we can monitor these patients initially, or whether if there's significantly abnormal areas in the prostate on MRI, then it would push us more to have a biopsy of the prostate gland. But it's also important, especially with men with enlarged prostate glands, so that at the time of biopsy, that I can focus on any abnormal areas at the time of biopsy. So in addition to our standard biopsies, we'd also take additional biopsies of any abnormal area. Hopefully in the near future, we'll also be offering MRI ultrasound fusion biopsies to even be more accurate in my targeting. And this is just really about some of the work I did way back when I was a registrar about multiparametric MRI and prostate disease and prostate cancer. Next slide, please. So this is really what it's all about. Here in the cartoon on the left, that's a relatively normal looking but enlarged prostate. So that's a benign prostatic enlargement. The large area in the center there is the what we call the adenoma. That's where most of the BPH arises, and that whiter area there looks sort of like a mustache, a verted mustache, is what we call the peripheral zone. This is where most cancers tend to arise, and that's a relatively normal MRI, but an enlarged prostate. As you can see there on the either side, that's your hip bones, just to give you an idea of how big this prostate is. That's probably about a 7,500 gram prostate, but radiologically relatively normal looking prostate. Whereas on the right hand side there, that's an abnormal MRI. You can see clearly that you can't see that same anatomy with this prostate on the right, and I've circled there in red. That's a lesion in the peripheral zone of that prostate. And at the time of biopsies, I will do the standard biopsies, but I will also then take some additional biopsies, usually 2 or 3, from any abnormal areas that are seen on MRI, so that hopefully, if those come back all negative, I'm feeling a lot more confident that they don't have hopefully any significant disease. But if there is some disease there, that I have targeted it and hopefully can better characterize the men's disease, men's prostate cancer, and therefore be able to better counsel them as to what treatment that they can have. Next slide. With this, I wanted to show what biopsies are all about. It's a little too graphic and probably a little bit too early in the morning to be showing the actual procedure, but at the time of biopsy, this is what I do. I do a longitudinal view of the prostate so that I can identify the base, the mid part, and the apex of the gland, and I systematically take some tissue from the prostate gland. Next slide, please. And I'm hoping that next slide you'll see a little video clip. If we click on that again, please, it should run, and you will see how quick it is. How within a second or okay. Just showing how to target how the actual biopsy is actually done. So it's a spring-loaded biopsy instrument, and it quickly fires through the prostate and takes a little sliver of tissue, usually 18 to 20 millimeters in length, about 1 millimeter in diameter, and we send it off to the lab, and my pathology colleagues will then look at that in great detail and then furnish me with a report a few days later. And next slide, please. So biopsies aren't totally benign. They do come with some risk. I do tell men roughly about 1 in 20 men will, so the more common problems you will see with following biopsy is that you will see some blood in your stool afterwards. This is with your transrectal biopsies. You might see some blood in your urine as well after biopsy. This usually settles within 24, 48 hours. I advise men plenty of fluids just to have a regular motion, passing urine regularly if they see any blood in your urine. And usually rectal bleeding will settle within 24, 48 hours. The real problem with biopsies, to be honest, is really the risk of infection. Despite giving men antibiotics in office, and I also send them home with some oral antibiotics for a few days, about 1 in 20 men will still develop a urinary tract infection that would require a more prolonged course of antibiotics. And unfortunately as well, you can get one out of every 50 men will have a severe infection that might warrant hospitalization from IV antibiotics. So although the risk is very, very, the risk, as you can see, is very, very low, but you have to counsel men very well about this. So again, not to be afraid about having your biopsy done. If the complication of an infection develops, we can manage that quite easily with IV antibiotics. I roughly do about 40, 50 biopsies a year. Last year, I only had 1 man who had to be admitted to hospital because of infection. So you can see it's a very, 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 very low risk. And it is a very important procedure that could potentially save your life. Next slide, please. So yeah, so this is what I was talking about. So that hospitalization is really sepsis, or what we call in the general public blood poisoning as a result of having doing biopsies across the rectum. I'm hoping to move to, in the near future, hopefully in the latter half of the year, to offer transperineal biopsy. This is where you do the biopsies rather than through the rectum or the back passage, to do it through the perineum, is that area between the scrotum and the anus, that rather than going through the rectum, or what we call transfecal biopsies, you do it through the skin there. And actually in a lot of centers, like where it was at King's and stuff, we didn't used to use any, or right now they don't use any antibiotics because the risk of sepsis is so low. Next slide, please. Okay, I think that's the end. So I really wanted to present transrectal biopsy so that men will become comfortable with the procedure. And know, although it is to a certain extent a little bit invasive because you're passing an instrument into the back passage, that the actual procedure takes about 10-15 minutes. And most men go home right away afterwards without any major problems. And if there is any problem, we can manage that appropriately.
The problem, as you've identified, is the possibility of bleeding and some form of sepsis or so. Pain, you didn't talk about that at all. I know you told me there's local anesthesia at the...
It is uncomfortable. Yeah. Yes, sorry, I should have mentioned that. At the time of the biopsy, we do what we call a periprostatic injection. We will inject around the prostate with local anesthetic, and this significantly reduces men's pain. So when I first started here in Barbados, I did an objective pain score for men. I got them to do a visual analog score, and most men were scoring between 1 to 2. So visual analog score, you go from 1 to 10 as the maximum, the worst pain that imaginable, and most men were scoring 1s, 2s. You know, everybody's pain threshold is different. So we had some 4s and 5s, but the vast majority of people found it, a lot of times said it wasn't as bad as they anticipate, because they really do think that it's a lot more invasive than it really is. And if you're having pain, you're having discomfort, you just let myself know or your urologist know, and I'm sure they will stop, take a break, give you some more anesthetic, and the procedure is really, it is uncomfortable rather than painful. And afterwards, I routinely give men paracetamol, and most men don't need anything more than that in terms of their pain, for pain relief. But if they do, they can have simple over-the-counter medications, ibuprofen, Voltaren, anything like that. But the vast majority of men just manage simply with paracetamol afterwards.
So thereafter, though, having completed the procedure, and I've gone home and I'm managing my urine levels and so forth, and watching all the different things to avoid infection, how do I know that it has healed and I no longer have to worry about healing?
Yeah, so I counsel men very well about this. So I do tell them that the bleeding should stop within 24-48 hours. Actually, I do keep them in clinic afterwards and make sure that they're voiding and passing urine okay and comfortable before you go home. And I warn them that I actually give them literature because I was mostly in Britain. I give them the BAUS, the British Association of Urological Association patient leaflet, which outlines all the symptoms. So fever, feeling unwell, flu-like symptoms. These would suggest infection. Burning when you pass water would suggest infection. If that happens, they get in contact with me and get them back into clinic as soon as possible and start them on a more prolonged course of antibiotics. But they actually do go home with a 3-day course of ciprofloxacin, is my preferred antibiotic, unless they've been exposed before. Okay. So as I said, the infection is very, very low. Less than about 1 in 20 will develop a UTI. That would require a more prolonged course of antibiotics.
Good. So for anyone again who's just joined, they're asking, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we've had elevated levels at PSA, or there's a bit of a concern having done the digital, and now you're just checking to see the biopsy allows you to be able to take a further detailed look at the tissue, so you get a sense of the level of disease or not in that tissue. That's the reason why you're doing this.
No. Yeah, that's the reason why we're doing this. Lots of men always ask, is there any other way to diagnose prostate cancer? I'm afraid not. We're looking to get some better ways, because we know that PSA isn't very sensitive, isn't the most sensitive test. Unfortunately, here in Barbados, we're not as good as in overseas in the UK and the USA, where only a third to a quarter of their biopsies are positive. I find here about 3/4 of my biopsies right now are positive. So it's still a very good screening tool here in Barbados. But overseas, where a lot of patients that have had prostate cancer have been identified, it is very difficult when you have 3 out of 4 biopsies being negative to convince people to have a biopsy, especially when you can have some really horrible infections, because overseas there's lots of resistance to antibiotics, and that's really presenting a real problem. But I do believe, and I'm hoping that the studies that the Barbados Cancer Society were involved with in terms of hopefully identifying another marker, it's really good that Barbados was in the forefront of that study to hopefully identify something that's a little bit better than PSA. There are a few other markers under trials really that we're hoping that will hopefully in the next few years, coming years, be able to identify those men who are more at risk of prostate cancer, who absolutely need to have a biopsy, and those who don't need to have a biopsy. But for right now, unfortunately, PSA is the best thing we have, so we have to continue to use it.
So how soon, having taken the biopsy and it's sent off for some further investigation by your colleagues, how soon thereafter will I hear what's the status, what's going on? How soon?
So I routinely get you back to clinic in 1 week's time after the biopsy to discuss the results. And then if there is prostate cancer, then we would need to obviously go on to then see the extent of your cancer, and then that would then guide us how best to treat it. So usually my pathology colleagues usually turn around actually within 3 to 4 days. But so that we have everything all together, we have a nice, put everything together, I get patients in routinely 1 week later. So I usually do biopsies on Wednesday, and then Wednesday mornings, and then Wednesday afternoons, I get patients back the following week, Wednesday afternoons, to discuss the results.
Or 7 days of walking around with that on my mind, just feels like forever.
I know it can be a little bit daunting, but I do tell men that it's all about counseling. It's really about counseling men very well. One, if you, from the American side of things, 1 in 8 men in America are diagnosed with prostate cancer. In Europe and England, where it's not as, screening is not as vigorous as in the USA, about 1 in 10, 1 in 12 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer throughout our lifetime. But if you manage your prostate cancer correctly, well, in the early stages, right, and that's very important to catch it early, less than 1 in 25 men will die from prostate cancer. Most men live with prostate cancer rather than die from prostate cancer. One of the main problems we have here in Barbados is, unfortunately, a lot of men are delaying coming to the doctor. So I find there are 2 peaks here in Barbados. You have the men who come for really good. So men with strong family history of cancers, they tend to present very early when their PSA is quite low. And a lot of times you can just monitor those men. And unfortunately, the real peak, at least in my practice, is that men who come with a little advanced, a little higher PSA, usually have a very aggressive disease that needs to be treated. Not necessarily spread outside the prostate, but needs to be treated. So therefore, that is really my experience so far here in Barbados over the last 2+ years.
Dr. Rouse, I intend to get an A with a distinction in this course. You better believe it. Yeah, I've learned so much from you, and I'm looking forward to the next class that I'll have with you, indeed. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us.
It was a pleasure. Thanks very much. Good morning, Barbados.
Good morning. Dr. Paul Rouse, a urologist indeed, and again assuring us that through the transrectal ultrasound guided biopsy of the prostate, we can have earlier intervention and we can have far more positive outcomes as a consequence. Thank you so much, Dr. Rouse. All right, we'll take a break. We'll take a break here, and we're coming back with more on Morning Barbados.
Morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
12 minutes now to 8 o'clock. The story is told of two students in the final year of their program studying there for their bachelor's in social work at the University of the West Indies, deciding, you know what, we are going to look into this cost of living and the treatment of consumers. And so they've started what they call the Consumer Shield Project. We're happy to be joined by one of those final year students in Rashina Grant. With her is Therese James, a lecturer and a director of field education in the Department of Government Sociology, Social Work and Psychology at the KFL campus, and Natalie Murray, a mentor indeed. Good morning to each of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Rashina, it's your baby. Talk to me a little bit about what it is about consumerism, high cost of living, and a whole host of things that engaged you enough to want to take on this project.
Okay, so good morning, Pearson. Good morning, Barbados. When my partner Dawn and I first started our practicum at the University of the West Indies, we would have had a conversation with our mentor, Natalie Murray, when we were given the task to create a project around citizen advocacy. And she would have highlighted the consumer issues that were prevalent in Barbados, well, still prevalent in Barbados at this time. So what we did, we went ahead and we did a needs assessment to further gain insight on the issues that Barbadians were facing as consumers. Because, you know, as an individual living in Barbados and consuming goods and services on a daily basis, we found it important that Barbadians became consumer aware and they understand their consumer rights.
Mm-hmm. And do you see the movement where Barbadians are becoming more aware and knowing their consumer rights?
Well, as you go on social media and you will see in the news, you will see Barbadians going to social media platforms to express their concern, especially when it is a case that they figure that they have faced an injustice. So we're finding more persons really going to social media platforms to express their concern with the injustices that they are facing as consumers in Barbados.
You said you recognize that some of those complaints are not just limited to unfair contract terms under the hire purchase agreement, defective products, poor quality or incomplete work by suppliers, unfair pricing, and the list can go on. Therese, you seem as if you're teaching well. You know, she's getting the idea about not just recognizing what the problem is, but doing something about it. That must make you as a lecturer, a guide, to feel very, very proud about what you're doing.
Yes, Pearson, good morning, everyone. I am very proud of my students. Rashida and Dawn have decided, they had a choice of what they wanted to focus on. I didn't tell them what to focus on, but they had to do research in whatever area they decided to work on and also do what we call a need assessment. Because there's no sense doing a project if there's no need. So Dawn and Rashina, they literally researched last semester. This program actually runs for 1 year. And they researched last semester, they did the need assessment, and I was very impressed with their project. And I told them to continue with it into a macro level placement this semester. So this semester, they're doing the initial stage of the awareness. I just want to say no too, before I forget later, that this is just not a 1 year program. They're only with me for 1 year and they will graduate and move on. But they will come back next semester, which starts in September, to assist 2 other students with continuing this program. So the program has a level of longevity to it. And the second stage now will be forming a consumer awareness advocacy group. So they're returning once they graduate to assist, and Natalie will also be there. I want to also say thank you on this forum to Natalie, because Natalie graduated from my program in 2011. Mm-hmm. And I called her back in to mentor these 2 students because this is an area that she's very versed in. But generally, we're now approaching the program, we're bringing in mentors to mentor those students who are in the field, doing these macro-based nationalistic projects. My role is to supervise. I'm the director of field education. I supervise them and make sure they're going in the right direction. Yes, I lecture and teach. But I find that I'm very proud that my students literally can take a lot of autonomy and move on without much assistance, at least not from me. I just guide and teach them the theoretical side of it. And Natalie also is a support. But they're very strong and they're very passionate about, especially Dawn and Rashida. We have others who are doing other projects as well. But today, Dawn and Rashida were so passionate about this program. And I also just want to mention that Dawn, too, has a background in law. So she did social work and law. So she's bringing the law also into that aspect of law into this particular project. So they're doing exceptionally well. And I'm very, as you said, Pierce, I'm very proud of them.
Yes.
I know they're going to do even better this semester because they want to get out of UE. And I want them to get out of UE, and therefore they will. But I'm happy that they're coming back to help those coming, and they're interviewing the other students that are coming in September to pick the 2 that they feel are ideally suited for this particular project. So it has been a great semester with not just Dawn and Rashida, but all of my students.
Yes.
I'm very proud of all of them, and you'll see them. I think I'm coming back on television. I don't know if it's sometime in February.
Yes.
We have 2 more who are
Yes.
doing another project. So yeah, I'm very proud. Thank you, and I thank Mornin Barbados for having us here today to showcase this project.
Indeed, I can see the pride in your face. It's almost like a mummy. Just let her little birds fly. Let them fly now. I've done my best.
I have 2 children. I have 2 more, and this class actually has about. I think it's like almost. We have literally almost. Sometimes we've had 40 students on the program, and it has gone down to about 20 or so. But it's still a lot, and
that's good.
you know. But I definitely enjoy it.
That's really
enjoying
fantastic. So Natalie, as a mentor though, here it is now, you're not just sitting by the wayside watching, you're helping to guide and to shape the outcomes that you believe that this project has. So let's talk a little bit about your involvement with these 2 young ladies in getting to really build out this Consumer Shield project.
Good morning, Pearson. Good morning, Barbados. I am super excited to be part of this project, and I really want to thank Mrs. James for involving me, because social work in Barbados is traditionally done at the governmental level, and it involves a lot of case work. But I know that Ms. James, she believes in radical social work. She believes, and you may ask me, what is radical social work? Radical social work involves looking at those structures within the society that create injustices, and then you empower the citizens through awareness, through advocacy, to come together and have a voice and bring about social change to those issues. So I am so excited, because you hardly hear social workers who are supposed to be change agents involved in this kind of social work, where you would actually go out there, create an awareness about your rights as a consumer, and actually set up a consumer protection body. And my involvement in this was really, really exciting, because I created a safe space for Rashina and Dawn to come and to vent their frustration, to share their ideas, and to guide them to the different agencies, resources that are available to help them to get to this point. So, Pearson, I think that even though we are in a republic,
yes,
I believe that citizens should have a voice, and to become engaged and become aware of their rights. And we know that there are monopolies that exist in Barbados, and we really need to get this consumer body up and running. Really need to have it up and running.
Rashina, then, now the task is back to you and Dawn. You're the energy behind this. What is it that you're developing so that people watching this morning can get a sense of what it is and how they can engage with it?
Okay, so the project would be for a 12-week period, where we would be doing bi-weekly presentations in collaboration with 2 government agencies which are well-versed in consumer issues. That would be the Office of Public Counsel and the Supervisor of Insolvency. So we will be going out into communities and to various groups and presenting to them on the importance of understanding your consumer rights. And in addition to that, we will be making weekly posts on our social media pages with consumer tips which we would have received from the Fair Trading Commission.
So where can I engage with these tips on your social media? What pages should we go to?
Okay, so we can be found on both Instagram and Facebook at CSP Barbados, the Consumer Shield Project Barbados, on both of those platforms.
Okay, CSP Barbados spelled out, CSP Barbados on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll see daily tips to remind us of, you're really providing empowerment for the people known as the consumer. And as Natalie says, we're the citizens. A republic requires we the people to do something about what we, the people, want to see
Exactly.
change and affected. And so you are a critical part of the building out of that process going forward as well, Rashida. It's really fantastic, as young as you are, to have the energy and the drive to be able to do so. And I know Therese has a whole cohort of others who will be following in your footsteps. You lead the way and they will follow you, because it's your light that you're shining that we want to see the change through. And so, Therese, you know, I know there are some others you've said who are coming through, but how much of this is a part of, in your own mind, the reshaping of us as a republic?
It is very, as Natalie addressed that topic earlier, it is so important in reshaping our society as we know a republic. There is a need for citizens to have a voice, because there are issues that are occurring that there's really no platform to voice their opinion on. And so therefore this type of project which Rashida and Dawn are doing allow the citizens of Barbados to have a voice and a platform for persons to hear, especially hopefully in terms of policy formation, and even, as you'll see with our next group coming, in terms of legislation, because these are issues that affect all of us as citizens of Barbados. This is not just about the department and what it's doing for students in an instant level. It is definitely something that will, hopefully persons will buy into the vision of the students, and they will be part of the entire movement. So it is critical that our citizens have a platform to state their concerns, what their challenges are, what they would like done about them, and for government and other entities to hear, and like I said, to move either towards change or just generally to make things, people are aware the different agencies, what has to be done. Or I'm looking at, in terms of this program in the macro base, we're going beyond into policy development, legislation being in place. And I said, this is just one program. There are many more coming up that you will, Barbados will hear about and understand what I'm saying today about this.
We got to leave it there, ladies. Yours is the last voice, Therese. But thank you, Therese James, Lecturer, Director of Field Education with the University of the West Indies. Rashida Grant, whose project it is, final year student there at the University of the West Indies in social work. And Natalie Murray, who's a familiar face to us here on Morning Barbados as well. Thank you so much, ladies, for the passion you bring to what you do. And we believe it will do the consumers good. So look out, folks, for this, the Consumer Shield Project. CSP Barbados on social, and engage. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So that's it for today, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Our production crew of Nadia Foster, Rowell Ford, Michael Sowers, of course our girl Tamisha Green at Master Control. I'm Pearson Boyne, seeing you again tomorrow if it be God's will. Take care. Bye-bye.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Barbados, get up. Good morning.